Okay, we're almost out of time, so I'm good. And Maurice has already answered this question, I think, but I'm just going to close by asking for a vote from the panel members. If there weren't 90,000 people in Ohio Stadium tomorrow, and there weren't scholarships, this is speaking as a former Division III athlete, would you have continued to play your sport in college because you love the sport or not? So, show of hands.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that says a lot. And I don't want student athletes to lose that passion for their sport because we make it too much of an issue and too much of a business. And I think that's true for I mentioned the 500,000 NCAA athletes. I think that's true for virtually all of them. So I will close with that, and I think you guys did an awesome job, so I really appreciate it. And now I think we have questions from the audience. And I'll get out of your way.
Real quick before we go to that, I know not everyone was here at the intro, but I want to thank everyone for coming because it was an amazing day. Social science is behind a lot of the sports and society initiatives, so my faculty in econ and communications and sociology, political science, and psychology, and so they're the backbone of this program, which we just launched this year. So to have an event like this within a year is very rewarding. I also want to tell you a little bit more broadly and to reassure the panelists in some ways about what sports and society wants to do. Certainly it's panels like this where we're addressing what we think are some of the most important issues that intersect with sports and society today. But we are also developing curriculum here. So Nicole Kraft has a new media and sports class. We have economics of sports. We have sociology in sports. We also at Ohio State University are looking at revising the general education curriculum, which hasn't been revised, I think, since 1987. And so part of that is talking about exactly the kind of life skills classes that you're talking about. My colleague, Dean, over in education and human ecology is very much interested in this finance course of being part of our general curriculum. Generally, that's kind of like a third rail in academics. You don't talk about what everybody's going to take, but President Drake has embraced and has been talking about being bold and doing exactly that. So I think there's some reason to be optimistic there. I also want to let you know another important part of sports and society is talking about careers for students who have a passion for sports, who aren't going to be going to the NFL or the NBA, et cetera. Greg Strezik, one of our alums, who came back and gave a talk about our new major in data analytics, and we have a social science track that just got approved this year, and bringing alums back like Greg to talk about how to have careers to harness that passion for sports is important. And then the bedrock is really our faculty research that we're doing on these issues. And we're very much bringing students in on that. So one of our alums, Barry Gluck, has put together a research grant for this summer for Chris to work with a student athlete, Carolina Vergosen, who's going to be working one-on-one with Chris. And it's these kind of mentorship relationships that they can get in faculty at Ohio State that make a big university small that I think can make a real difference. And the big key to me for social science and sports and society to launch well are our alums who are a part of our board here. So that includes Jim Trelevin, Barry Gluck, Kristin Watt, Marscilla Packer, Greg Strezik, and Matt Mitten. They've just been real fundamental in helping me think through issues that I wouldn't be well equipped to do without them. So I appreciate their time and commitment to sports and society. And with that, Trevon, you want to take some questions?
Is this great? So we wanted to hear from you because we know that a lot of ideas have been floating around this morning. I believe we have 2 microphones to allow us to facilitate questions from the audience. We're first going to hear from Matt Coppedge, who is coming from Representative Joyce Beatty's office for a little bit more of the political side of this debate. Matt.
Thank you. Thank you all very much for having me here. On behalf of the Congresswoman, I do want to say hello. Ohio State is always a very special and dear place to her. This is the heart of her district. the 3rd Congressional District of Ohio. So unfortunately, she's in Washington just finishing up votes. I'll be heading to the airport after this to pick her up. But thank you to all the panelists for both panels this morning, and to all of you for such an interesting topic. The Congresswoman is the lead Democratic sponsor of legislation called the National Collegiate Athletics Accountability Act, or the NCAA Act. And this bill amends Title IV of the Higher Education Act of 1965. It does a lot of things. One, it requires annual baseline concussion testing for student athletes before they participate in contact sports. That's something that's very near and dear to the Congresswoman, is traumatic brain injury. It also enforces certain due process procedures for student athletes when it comes to infractions and rules violations. It requires athletically related student aid to be guaranteed for the duration of the student's attendance, up to 4 years, and makes it irrevocable due to skill or injury. And it also permits institutions to pay stipends. There's some other things it does, but those are kind of the highlights. That's also why I had to bring the cheat sheet with me, because it does so much. But the main impetus for this legislation, and with her bipartisan colleagues that she is working on this with, is to really make sure that for student athletes that we're getting back to and closer to academics. You know, athletics is great, and she wants student athletes to pursue that. She's an avid Ohio State football fan herself, but they are student athletes at the end of the day, and many of you on both panels talked about how important the academic side is. So my question to both panelists is, and I know that you touched on this a little bit, so kind of asking you to elaborate, is do you think that paying student athletes would enable to bring the system closer to being able to focus more on that academic side, or if it doesn't, why not?
I think it would take away from the academic side. I would fear that young kids playing sports, I'll use basketball for an example, would start looking at it where, oh, I want to get paid to do this, and not looking at it more so, I want to get my education. So many different structures we've heard about today. Oh, I'll get paid $10,000 for a season. Well, that might be where their mindset is. Instead of, getting my degree, finishing college, and moving on from there, it's all about the money now. And I think that would be very negative for especially how youth sports are now. I think that they would be starting to think that like that very, very young.
I think the opposite. Then I think it would make you. I honestly think it would alleviate some pressure that these athletes face. We talk about it was a basketball player at UConn who was starving. So I think a lot of times if it was, now I'm not saying paying $20,000, but I think there should be a gradual approach, some type of stipend that can take the pressure off them. I mean, there's some kids in the inner city who would love to just be able to fly their grandmother up to one game because she's never been out of Tuscaloosa, Alabama, right? I mean, I'm just an example. And I'm not saying it has to be a huge, huge amount, but something probably a little more than what they currently get.
I mean, I'm the same way, and I was going to definitely chime in, but I don't think it's anybody's place to care how an athlete should feel if he gets money or not. We get some sort of money right now already, or the young kids, they get a stipend, but you shouldn't care how much this person is making or where their focus will be at. There's a lot of people who go into different degrees and different professions for the money, or they do what they do based upon money, period. And so to say just because he's an athlete and he already gets a scholarship because he plays football or basketball, whatever it may be, and he'll be focused on that, so what? Who cares if he's focused on that? When Shawn came, he said, I was focused on going to the NFL. That's my only focus when I was here.
I wasn't focused. I knew that was.
Yeah.
Let me correct that. That was my only focus, but I had an idea I had an idea probably after my sophomore year.
Well, let me speak for myself.
Right.
I played one game. I did well. I'm going to the NFL. I can care less about anything else going on here.
Right.
That's where my head is at. So to say we give him money and we care about it, that's a totally different kind. Those are personal feelings towards athletics and feeling privilege. The fact that he has a value to the university, I think, is something totally different, and a value towards what's being generated. That's all I'm saying. And just like Lauren said, the irony of Lauren saying, hey, I don't want to go to these places because I'm not paid and I got a valuable, my skill set and my education, my information I have to give to people is valuable. It's the same thing student athletes saying. I'm valuable, so let me be valued and give me what I'm worth.
Well, but that brings up a different point. If you know a guy is a junior year and he's going to make $5 million, that could cause some friction among the players too. So I think.
What you mean?
Meaning like, okay, Maurice Correct, you on a team and you starting tailback. I'm the starting corner. We both have egos, and you might say I'm going to NFL, and I might be like I'm top 3 pick. You're not gonna make more money than me. That's a whole different psychology when you talk about the brand. Cause let me face it. That's why it's important to understand like. One, we want to be fair because you want to have the VCUs. I live in Virginia. You want to see the VCUs and stuff. You don't want to be totally crushed by the Dukes of the world, right? So even though it's not fair, you want to give those guys a chance in basketball. But when you're talking about in college, one thing I will tell anybody who comes into the Ohio State program, there's nobody bigger than that program. As good as you are, we'd have had 20 guys like you. As good as I am, we've had 30 guys, and I can name them from Neil Cozy to Jack Tatum.
We're going to continue to have them.
We're going to continue to have them because it's part of that brand of Ohio State. It's a greatness. Everybody in this room, because this brand is great. So nobody's bigger than that program. But I do believe that you should get some type of compensation. And if I know I was going to get drafted high, maybe you're right. I could have an insurance policy that pays me or put it into an annuity account for when I do leave school, just in case of something like that. That's all I'm saying. And I don't know if it was Joe or whoever talked about earlier, if you could possibly get some money for your appearances, maybe it goes into account, but you can't access everything. It's a lot of guys out of control. If they got 50,000, I'm telling you guys, with football players, we have bigger issues. Like volleyball players be having kids. It'd be a whole bigger issue. These guys driving around with Mercedes. Y'all joking. I'm dead serious. You talk about Lawrence, you talking about life skills. These guys be out of control with 80,000, 100,000 miles on campus. It's the truth. Be calling your attorney.
Right. We want to thank.
Can I say something real quick? And Congresswoman Beatty, we're neighbors. So for her to say she's an avid football fan and not basketball too, I'm gonna have to get her for on that. So that's number one. Okay. All right. Now, she also said we're pretty close, and I talked to her a lot about our curriculum and what we've done. And she also said that, particularly as black folks, we need to be on both sides of the cash register, meaning we need entrepreneurship skills, we need life skills, we need all these different skills that we need as well. And there has to be some type of mechanism or tie. Again, I'm against paying players, but I think if you are going to do that, then you have to have some type of prerequisite in order to get that or have access to that money. Again, you can't handicap these players. Right? You can't continue to do that. You have to put them in a better situation than when they first came to this university. Yep. That's mandatory. Yep. So there has to be some stipulation involved. I would love to see her legislation to add some other layers in addition to what she proposed there. That would be my take. And I just knock on her door. All right, she's coming in town. I'll see her tonight.
We have our first question.
Thanks so much, Eric Troy, the Ohio State University Office of Student Life. Good to see some of the colleagues on the panel that I know. Shawn, especially with Majority One. Quick question for you. I'm also an alumnus of the sport management program here back in '96 and represented professional athletes in the Atlanta market around the marketing and branding. Want to dial it back to what do we need to do in elementary school. That's right. It's not high school. It's not on a college campus. We know the research that it starts by the 3rd grade.
That's right. There it is.
By the 3rd grade. To my friends here from the media standpoint, ESPN Magazine, and others, the imagery, especially for black males that we see in imagery, we need to see more ownership that looks like us rather than playership. So I think in the curriculum aspect, we need to incorporate how do I become an owner, not just a player? Or maybe should I say it? Ooh.
I'm fine, I'm embarrassed.
How do we do both in terms of the balance? So my question for the panel is, how do you continue to reach back in the household to talk about by the 3rd grade or the 5th grade, they understand what is required, not Pee Wee, AAU, but what is the aspect that we look at? So way before they come to a college campus, there's a level of expectations that if you don't meet the bar academically, no pads, no grades, no pads. So I just want to address that, but I want to commend the administration here for the launch of the program. Count me in to support the efforts as a product for this great institution. Thanks.
Now you said 3rd grade. Most people don't know this, and this should make you feel outraged, regardless of your ethnicity. To determine how many prisons to build or how many beds to make available in prison, they look at the test scores of 3rd grade black males. Let me say it again. Wow. Say it again. They look at the 3rd grade test scores of black males to determine. Because they're saying if Pookie and Ray Ray are messing up in 3rd grade, let's just go ahead and get his bed ready for him when he's 18, because that's more than likely. I go into juvenile facilities all the time and talk to these young kids. You're talking about deficits. They got a lot of deficits, all right? But you gotta get back to here and go early in the process. At college, they should at least, like we're talking about dealing with some of these deficits, okay? But these deficits start way back here. And between the ages of 9 and 13, a kid already makes up in his or her mind what they want out of life, whether or not they want to do the right things or the wrong things, all right? Between the ages of 9 and 13, okay? That's just based on research. So we have to really, really think about how can we do some preventative stuff so that kids don't have these deficits continue. And then in the pros, they're perpetuated when you get money even more. So we've got a whole issue, not just athletes, it's much bigger than athletes, okay? But how do we, because I would tell people all the time, I tell wealthy people all the time, millionaires, I said, look, we're gonna pay at the front end or the back end, but one way you're gonna pay. So you can support organizations, other organizations, or you're gonna pay at the back end, welfare, incarceration. How you wanna pay? Let's do it. So we have to really think about this issue because it's about athletes. We've all been blessed with our athletic ability, but what about the kids who can't play any sports, who will never be able to play at the big time level? Do they not still enjoy a shot at life? Of course, of course.
Matt, you had a comment?
Oh, I was just on that first question on should athletes be paid. I think if you're a college athlete, it's got to be tied to either your educational achievement or the educational benefits you're providing to others. Marscilla, I loved your proposal. The idea is, why shouldn't the NCAA permit, college athletes to go out and get paid? You can make a huge difference there. And in my mind, it all comes back to what Coach Woody Hayes said. If anyone's read his book, it's called You Win with People. And he says in there, well, you try to get everything you can out of the athlete in terms of football, but the athlete who doesn't earn his degree has been cheated. And that's true across the board, really for all sports. And I think that's what we really should get back to, is there's plenty of money out there. It just needs to be, rechanneled for the right reasons.
But it depends on your degree. A lot of degrees, I hate to say it, they're meaningless. A degree, it has to be something substantive that you can use. So we can't just push a degree just to get a piece of paper. It has to have some value to it.
Yes.
Yeah, I would agree as an educator. I mean, I don't think you should channel athletes necessarily into other things. I mean, we've got music degrees, art, all kinds of things. It's just creating something that provides valuable life skills and whatever they're going to do.
I think it goes back to also, if you tell a kid they're dumb, they're dumb.
That's right.
If you tell a kid that they're smart, they're smart. And, I was one of those kids that they told me I was dumb. And you know what? Not so dumb. So, I think it goes back. I love what Lawrence is doing. It's amazing. So it's a great program, but he's right. I mean, education, I think, is everything to get us to the point where we get to where we're at, where we need to be.
Hi, Rob Aller, Columbus Dispatch. Shawn, you touched on this, but I'm just curious, the whole dynamic in the locker room. When you talk about tiered pay, it's one thing to be 30 years old in the NFL and a guy's making $10 million and another guy's making $2 million. But for 18-year-old kids, if one guy's making $40,000 and one guy's making $1,000,
Right.
What's the dynamic in the room? How does that play out in terms of team and product?
And that's why I don't believe it should be a tiered pay. I believe that all student athletes should get a stipend that amounts to the same, however you divide that up. And then there's the guys like Maurice Corrett, who has the jersey sales, who probably can have that put away on the side to him that he can have access to at some point. Or, as his junior year, if he want to be able to access, at some point, be able to access that money. Because if you talk about putting in a locker room where a guy gets $50,000, $60,000 and, and Maurice will tell you, it don't even take money for a guy. I think he should be starting over this guy. That'll really set the whole locker room off. And it just takes away from the teamwork, the discipline, working together. So I think the star football player is not better than the star basketball player, golfer, or whatever. We all should get, whether it's a Big Five power conference. So the big things we need to do is, I believe, it's like set up a trust where you have guaranteed 4-year scholarship, you got guaranteed lifetime disabilities, and you come up with a solution for stipends where the NCAA makes $2 billion or whatever, 20% of that goes and it just gets spread among the athletes, and the guys who are special and their jersey is selling. For me, it was, for us, it was, matter of fact, I have to tell you the story about how Orlando Pace was stealing my cleats and selling them. but you're right. Guys should be able to be able to sell their jerseys or whatever, be able to make money off the side. That might be put into account for those guys for when they, and I don't know what the legal ramification is behind it, but be able to set some aside.
And I mean, that's, to me, after hearing you out, that's why I like for people like to talk and explain everything. After hearing you out, that doesn't sound like a bad thing, because I can see some of the potential things that you think about, because I can visualize the locker room getting like that. But then also, I'm like in the realm of, you can go to prison when you're 18, you can handle business at 18, you can do everything as an adult at 18. So it doesn't matter. Like, this is what you're valued at. Right. Like, so if I'm smart and I'm Mark Zuckerberg at 18 and I understand Facebook, I can go earn as much money as I can because I can do it. You know what I'm saying? And so if you only make like, if you're a good lawyer, you're a bad lawyer, or if you're a bad lawyer, get better. You know what I'm saying? And like, that's how I think about life in general. Like, your value and your skill to a certain organization or situation, you should be compensated with it, and it shouldn't be held in the realm of, okay, from 18 to 22, since we're society and we think that college is supposed to be like this cool, great experience, we're gonna set these expectations based upon how we feel that life should be lived. I just feel like if you can earn it, earn it. If you can't, you can't. Like, everybody can't do the same thing, and that's my feeling on it, because just think about it, 4 years later, you shift into a different paradigm, a different consciousness, because you're in professional sports, but nothing really changed. The whole system is the same. You know, you're playing with the same people, you're doing the same stuff, and okay, like, what if they said, okay, the first 4 years of your league, you generate all this money for Jerry Jones or whoever, but since you're the first 4 years, you know, we teeter you, or we feel that you should be appreciative to be in the NFL.
Mm-hmm. And the reason why I say you have to do it, because if you did that, then everybody would want to go to Ohio State and Alabama, because they know they're going to generate the most money because they're on TV the most, and that kills college sports.
It's the same thing with companies, right? You go to Google because Google has different benefits, and it's a major company. I just feel like that's life in so many different areas. You want to go to the biggest and best places where you can earn the most money.
Yeah, it sounds good until Ohio State wins the NCAA football tournament 25 years straight. It sounds good. It sounds good. It sounds good.
Exactly.
That would be free market.
Just a couple of observations. In 1968, Sports Illustrated did a series of articles that were kind of landmark on the black athlete. And it just strikes me how little things have changed. They raised lots of issues that you have here. And it shows how institutions are very slow to change. It just takes a long time. I'd also like to compliment both panels. You've handled this well. It's obviously potentially emotional. I wish presidential debates could be as civil.
You got Bernie Sanders in the front.
Thank you all. I come from a different perspective. I'm a New York City kid. Back when I played basketball in college, I did, Lawrence, play basketball in college, with the guy that changed the rules on, Lou Alcindor. How'd you like to be dunked on him every day getting out of gym? Back when we were in school, though, there was a freshman year rule which excluded us from playing varsity sports as a freshman. Do you people think that that would benefit? We're talking about the structure now, right? We're talking about poor people who've been born in places that make society difficult. Would that rule have given you, if we reinstituted that rule, would that given you a better platform to build the rest of your career on? And Coach Holman, even back to the high school, we didn't have that really in high school, but specifically, would that have helped you formulate a plan for your development of your students as well as athletes at the high school level? Thank you.
Yeah, I think your freshman year is your hardest year by far. You're trying to find yourself. You're told how great you are when you go to college. They wine and dine you, and then when you get to college, you're like, it's not really like that. It's totally different. And but I think you find yourself and you grow up. In the NBA, I think for the NBA, I think it should be mandatory 2 years that you should stay in college. Because you have to find yourself, and it takes a little time to do that. So I think 1 year sitting out is totally different. It's a different era now. right? It's totally different. Kids are impatient. They just, that wouldn't work in today's time.
That's right.
It's not a bad idea, but it's not, it wouldn't work in today's time. And by the way, Cream was my favorite player back in the day, so I got a lot of love for Lou Alcindor. Yes?
Excuse me, it wouldn't work because we don't suggest that to
Correct.
students. We got the tail wagging the dog. We've got a young fellow who's struggling in his family and in his society telling me, a
Right.
grandparent, right, who's lived through that era, that I'm wrong and he's right.
Right.
I completely disagree. I've agreed with almost everything you said because you've made a trail that leads to success. I don't want a 16-year-old snot-nosed kid, no disrespect if there are any in the room, a grandfather who's lived that a whole
Right.
entire life on how he should manage his life. That's what I'm here for.
Right.
My responsibility now as a member of society is to blaze a path for him, just like you're talking about.
Right.
Coach Holman is blazing a path for him. If a kid walks into him and says, I'm not coming to practice today because I gotta go to the movies, I can't imagine what his response is gonna be.
Due to Ohio High School Association rules, I can't say it's mandatory, but they need to be there.
There are repercussions, huh?
I can't really say that either, but they need to be there.
Because it's your responsibility, correct?
I agree.
Right.
I agree.
And I agree with you, Mr. Funderburke. That's our responsibility
Right.
as senior members of society. So if some snot-nosed kid comes and explains to me, that's not what I'm doing because, I'm on Twitter or whatever this crap is that they're on. I can't even spell Facebook. And I got as many degrees as you.
Right.
Then I'm failing him in society, just like
You
you
are.
said. You're
That's
failing
true.
him in
It's true.
society. What this gentleman's talking about in the 3rd grade.
Yeah.
He's failing him in society if he's letting a kid go to the 6th grade. Mr. Florette said he couldn't read, all right? Did you?
Not very well. No, but I just know I can read. I couldn't comprehend.
That's not his fault. That's your fault and my fault.
Right.
I'm his grandfather. I'm the one who's responsible for helping him. This gentleman is responsible.
Right.
So I don't want some snot-nosed kid telling me I'm not going to class because I got to go to the movies. Coach Holman, I hope you did what I would have did. That's why my kid graduated with honors.
He's got his head down, too.
And his sisters aren't even here.
Yeah. I mean, will they sit out for for the first year? It's not a bad idea to find yourself, but think about this for a second. These athletes are recruited, and they're predicted to come and make an immediate impact. I mean, just imagine if Maurice Clare had to sit out that first year, right? Probably wouldn't have went to the national championship. So the universities are not going to allow. I'm not saying it's not a bad idea, but it really is in many respects, unfortunately, about the money, in terms of this. But I think it's not a bad idea to go back to that. But I think if you make it at least mandatory, the longer a kid stays in college, I think the better off they'll be in terms of understanding what life is like, right? What it's like. Those of you who are parents, you understand. We have hindsight, and I think that's what we need to do here is we have hindsight, and we've got to be sensible and at the same time understand the needs of today's young people.